The girl lived in a small, crowded apartment on the edge of the city. The walls were thin, and the floors creaked with every step, but it was home. Her mother worked long hours as a cleaner in a nearby office building, coming back tired every evening, her uniform carrying the faint smell of cleaning supplies. Despite the exhaustion, she always had a warm smile for her daughter, and she did her best to make life feel safe and happy. The girl often watched her mother quietly as she folded laundry or washed dishes, admiring her strength and dedication. She knew that life was not easy, but she also knew that her mother loved her deeply, and that love was more valuable than anything money could buy. From a very young age, the girl had been drawn to music. She loved the way sounds could tell a story without words. She would spend hours humming melodies she remembered from the radio or from old recordings her mother kept in a small box. She did not have a piano at home, but she found ways to make her own music. She would tap on pots and pans, tap on the edge of the table, or press the keys of a broken toy keyboard she had once received as a gift. Even in these simple ways, she expressed herself, and sometimes she would close her eyes and imagine herself playing on a real piano in a grand hall, the notes filling the room and touching everyone who heard them. Her fascination with the piano grew stronger as she got older. She would watch videos of pianists on a small phone screen when she could borrow it from a friend or a neighbor. She was captivated by the way their fingers moved across the keys, how they could create such beauty from nothing but black and white keys. She wanted to touch the piano herself, to feel the keys under her fingers, and to hear the sounds that had been living in her imagination. But there were always obstacles. Pianos were expensive, and her family could not afford one. The thought of touching a real piano seemed like a distant dream, something that belonged to other people in other lives, not her own. One day, she heard about a small community center a few blocks away. It was a place where children could come after school, play games, and sometimes practice music. She had never been there before, but the idea of being near a real piano excited her. She decided to go even though she felt nervous. When she arrived, the center was full of children running around, laughing and playing. She walked quietly through the room until she found the music area. And there it was, standing in the corner of the room, a real piano. Its surface was shiny but slightly worn, and the keys were waiting to be pressed. She felt a mixture of fear and excitement. Could she really play it? Would it sound like the music in her head? She sat down on the bench, her heart beating fast. Her fingers hovered above the keys, unsure of where to start. She remembered the melodies she had hummed, the rhythms she had tapped, and slowly, carefully, she pressed a key. A single note rang out, simple and pure. She pressed another and another until a small tune began to take shape. It was not perfect, and her fingers stumbled at times, but it was her music, coming to life for the first time on a real piano. She could not stop smiling. This was everything she had imagined, and more. The sound filled the room and seemed to wrap around her, making her feel alive in a way she had never felt before. As she continued to play, a few of the other children stopped to listen. Some of them had never paid much attention to the piano before, but there was something different about the way she played. She did not play the notes perfectly or follow any rules, but her music was full of feeling. It told a story of her life, of her struggles, of her dreams. The children watched in silence, not fully understanding the music, but sensing that it was special. When she finally stopped, there was a brief moment of quiet, and then one of the children clapped. Soon others joined in. She felt a warmth in her chest, a sense that maybe, just maybe, this was the beginning of something more. The girl began visiting the community center regularly. Every afternoon, as soon as her mother returned from work, she would hurry to the piano. She practiced simple melodies at first, slowly learning to move her fingers more confidently. She experimented with different sounds, pressing keys in new combinations, listening to how they echoed together. She started to notice that she could make people feel something with her music, even if they did not understand exactly what she was playing. That feeling was intoxicating, and it made her want to keep playing, to keep exploring the endless possibilities of the piano. Her mother noticed the change in her. She saw the excitement in her daughter's eyes when she returned from the community center, the The way she would talk about the notes she had learned and the songs she wanted to play. She could see that her daughter had found something precious, something that made her happy in a way that nothing else could. Even though life was hard, the mother made sure her daughter had the time and space to pursue her music. Sometimes she would save a little money to buy sheet music, or she would bring home snacks for her daughter to take to the center. She knew that this piano could be more than just a hobby. It could be a path to a future she could never imagine. One afternoon, while the girl was playing, a volunteer at the community center stopped by. He had been teaching music to some of the other children and noticed how she played. He asked her if she had ever taken lessons, and when she shook her head, he smiled. He could see that she had a natural gift, something that could not be taught. He encouraged her to keep playing, to practice every day, and offered to help her learn new pieces. For the first time, the girl felt that someone outside her family believed in her talent. It was a small moment, but it filled her with hope and determination. Days turned into weeks and weeks into months. The girl practiced diligently, learning more about the piano and the music she could create. She discovered that she could express herself in ways that words could never capture. When she played, she could tell a story, share a feeling, or paint a picture in the minds of those who listened. Her life, once confined to a small apartment and quiet evenings, now had a new dimension. Music became her world, a place where she could escape from worries and find joy, even in the simplest moments. Even though she was still young, the girl began to dream bigger. She imagined performing in front of an audience, feeling the applause, and seeing the impact her music could have on others. She imagined inspiring people, showing them that talent could come from anywhere, even from a small apartment where her mother cleaned offices to make ends meet. These dreams felt distant, almost impossible, but the piano gave her hope. It was a reminder that she had something unique, something that could change her life if she worked hard and believed in herself. At home, she would sometimes replay the music in her mind, remembering the feel of the keys under her fingers and the sound filling the room at the community center. She began to write down her own melodies, creating small pieces that reflected her feelings, her hopes, and her dreams. Each new composition brought a sense of pride and accomplishment. She was not just playing music. She was creating it, shaping it from her own imagination and experience. This was her voice, and she was beginning to understand the power it held. The girl's journey at the piano had just begun. But even in these early days, it was clear that something extraordinary was happening. She had discovered a world that allowed her to dream, to feel, and to connect with others in a way she had never known. The piano had become more than an instrument. It was a bridge to a future she could only imagine, a tool to transform her life, and a way to inspire those around her. With each note she played, she took a step closer to that future, carrying the love of her mother and the strength of her own determination with her. The first part of her story ended with her fingers gently resting on the keys, a smile on her face, and a heart full of hope, ready for whatever came next. From the moment she first touched the piano, the girl became absorbed in music. Each day after school, she rushed to the community center, eager to sit at the keys and explore the sounds she could create. At first, her playing was uneven, with notes clashing and rhythms faltering. But she did not give up. She spent hours pressing keys in different combinations, listening carefully, and learning from her mistakes. Slowly, she began to understand how to make the notes flow together, how to shape a melody that felt alive and full of emotion. She had no formal lessons yet, so she relied on what she could learn from watching others and from listening. She would watch online videos whenever she could, studying how the hands moved, how the posture affected the sound, and how emotion came through in the music. She tried to copy the movements, but she quickly realized that she needed to find her own style, something that felt natural to her. She began experimenting with her own melodies, improvising songs that reflected her mood or the experiences of her day. Sometimes the music was bright and cheerful, sometimes soft and sad, but always honest and full of feeling. The community center became her sanctuary. She arrived there before the other children, finding a quiet corner and running her fingers over the keys. The piano was old and worn, but to her it was perfect. Every note seemed to respond to her emotions, echoing her thoughts and desires. She practiced scales and simple pieces, gradually building her confidence. Other children would often gather nearby, watching her play with curiosity and admiration. Some asked her questions, others tried to copy her, and a few simply listened in silence, captivated by the sound she created. One afternoon, a volunteer who taught music at the center stopped to observe her. He noticed the intensity and focus in her playing. She did not just hit the keys, she made them speak. He asked her if she had ever received any formal instruction, and when she shook her head, he smiled warmly. He could sense the raw talent in her and decided to offer guidance. He began showing her simple techniques, explaining how to improve her finger strength and hand positioning. He introduced her to new pieces, encouraging her to try songs that challenged her abilities. At first, she felt nervous and unsure, but soon she embraced the challenge, driven by the desire to learn and improve. Her mother, though busy and exhausted, noticed the transformation in her daughter. She could see the joy and confidence that music brought. She would listen from the small apartment, imagining her daughter's fingers moving across the keys, shaping sounds that carried a story. Sometimes she worried about whether it was realistic to dream of a future in music, but she never dampened her daughter's enthusiasm. She encouraged her to keep playing, praising her dedication and reminding her that talent and hard work could open doors that money could not. The girl's daily practice became a ritual. She would arrive at the center, warm up with scales, and then dive into the pieces she was learning. Her fingers grew stronger and more nimble, able to move across the keys with increasing precision. She began to understand rhythm, timing, and how to connect one note to the next to create a flowing melody. She listened to herself critically, noting mistakes and thinking about how to improve. Yet, she also allowed herself moments of freedom, improvising tunes that expressed her feelings in ways words could not capture. As her skill grew, so did her confidence. She started performing short pieces for the other children and volunteers at the center. They were impressed not only by her ability but by the emotion she conveyed through her playing. Her music was not mechanical. It was alive, filled with a depth that seemed unusual for someone her age. People began to notice, and word spread quietly about the girl who could play with a soul beyond her years. Though she remained humble, she felt a sense of pride and excitement. Music had become more than a pastime. It was a part of who she was. The volunteer introduced her to sheet music, something she had never used before. First, it was intimidating. The symbols seemed confusing, and she struggled to match them to the keys. But with guidance and patient practice, she began to read music and play the pieces as written. She realized that sheet music was like a secret language, a way to communicate with other musicians across time and space. Each new piece she learned expanded her understanding and skill, giving her more tools to express herself. She discovered that she could combine what she learned from sheet music with her own improvisations, creating something unique and personal. Despite the progress she was making, life at home remained the same. Her mother still worked long hours, and there were days when money was tight and food was scarce. Sometimes the girl worried about the future, wondering if her love for music could ever lead to anything more than this small community center. Yet each time she played, those doubts faded. The piano became her refuge, a place where nothing else mattered and where she could feel free. It was in these moments, alone with the music, that she understood the power of her talent and the possibilities it could bring. She began to dream of performing in front of larger audiences, imagining people listening and feeling the emotions she poured into her music. She imagined inspiring others, showing them that beauty could come from unexpected places, that talent could be found in the most ordinary circumstances. Her dreams were vivid and powerful, and they motivated her to practice even harder. Every note she played was a step closer to that imagined future. As the months passed, she developed a strong bond with the volunteer teacher. He shared stories of famous pianists and musicians, explaining how they had faced challenges and setbacks but persisted because of their passion. He encouraged her to think about her own path, to consider what she wanted to achieve with her music. She listened intently, absorbing every word. She began to understand that talent alone was not enough. Dedication, practice, and belief in herself were equally important. The girl also learned about performing for others. The volunteer arranged small recitals at the community center, giving her the opportunity to play in front of an audience. She was nervous at first, her hands shaking as she sat at the piano. But as she began to play, the familiar flow of music took over, and her nerves melted away. The audience responded with smiles and applause, and she realized the joy of sharing her music with others. Each performance gave her confidence, reinforcing her desire to continue and grow. Through these experiences, she began to understand that music was more than just a personal escape. It had the power to connect people, to inspire and move them in ways that words could not. She saw how her playing could touch the hearts of those who listened, even those she did not know. This realization filled her with a sense of purpose. She was not just learning to play. She was learning to communicate, to share a part of herself with the world. At home, she continued to practice mental exercises as well. When she could not be at the piano, she would hum melodies, tap out rhythms, and imagine new pieces in her mind. She started keeping a small notebook, writing down ideas for songs and sketches of melodies she wanted to try. Her creativity began to flourish, and she learned to trust her instincts and imagination. Music became a constant companion, a source of comfort and inspiration even when life was difficult. The girl's dedication and talent began to draw attention outside the community center. A few visitors and parents noticed her skill, whispering about the young girl who played with such feeling and expression. While she remained unaware of how remarkable her abilities were, the recognition started to build quietly around her. She focused more on the music itself than on any attention, but the small signs of acknowledgement fueled her ambition. She knew that with effort and persistence, her playing could reach further than she had ever imagined. As she matured, her style continued to develop. She blended the techniques she learned from the volunteer with her own improvisational instincts, creating pieces that were deeply personal. Each note was deliberate, each pause meaningful. She became more aware of how music could tell a story, evoke an emotion, or transport a listener to another place. She experimented with dynamics, tempo, and phrasing, learning how to create tension and release, joy and sorrow, all through the language of music. Through it all, her mother remained a steadfast supporter. She could not play music herself, but she understood its significance in her daughter's life. She would listen to her practice at the community center, sometimes sitting quietly in a corner, absorbing the music and feeling proud of her daughter's perseverance. She encouraged her to keep pushing, to embrace the opportunities that came her way, and to remember that her talent was a gift that could shape her future. The girl's journey was just beginning, but by the end of this stage, she had discovered the power of her own dedication and creativity. She had learned that practice, patience, and a love for what she did could transform her skills from simple melodies into expressive music that moved others. The piano was no longer just an instrument. It had become an extension of her spirit, a voice for her emotions, and a bridge to the world she dreamed of reaching. Her talent had begun to shine, setting the stage for opportunities and experiences that could inspire not only her own life but the lives of those who heard her play. The girl had been practicing diligently for months, and her skills had grown far beyond what she had imagined. One day, the volunteer who had been teaching her mentioned an upcoming community event at the local library. It was a small gathering, mostly for families and neighbors, but he suggested she perform a piece she had been working on. At first, she felt a wave of nervousness. The thought of playing in front of a group of people made her stomach twist with anxiety. She had performed for other children and volunteers at the center, but this would be different. The audience would be larger, and the attention focused entirely on her. Her mother noticed the hesitation and gently encouraged her. She reminded her daughter that this was an opportunity to share her music with others, and to see how far she had come. The girl took a deep breath and decided to accept the challenge. She spent the following days preparing, practicing the piece repeatedly, focusing on every note, every pause, every expression. She wanted it to be perfect, not just technically but emotionally, so that the audience could feel the story she wanted to tell. On the day of the event, the library was filled with a small but eager crowd. Children ran around in excitement, while adults found seats and chatted quietly. The girl waited backstage, her fingers twitching nervously. She could hear the murmur of the audience, the shuffle of feet, and the occasional cough. Her heart pounded in her chest, and she felt a knot of tension in her stomach. She closed her eyes for a moment, recalling the hours of practice, the melodies she had imagined, and the encouragement from her mother and the volunteer teacher. Slowly, she let her fingers relax and reminded herself that she was ready. When her name was called, she walked to the piano, her steps light but determined. The room quieted, and all eyes turned to her. She sat down on the bench, took a deep breath, and placed her fingers on the keys. The first note rang out, simple but clear, breaking the silence like a gentle whisper. She continued, letting the music flow from her heart, her fingers moving with confidence and grace. The melody began softly, then grew in strength, carrying emotion and storytelling with every note. She lost herself in the music, forgetting the audience, forgetting her nerves, immersed in the sound and feeling of her creation. The audience was captivated. They watched silently, feeling the depth of the music as it filled the room. Some closed their eyes, letting the notes wash over them, while others leaned forward in fascination. It was not just a performance. It was a story unfolding, a glimpse into the girl's world and her emotions. Her music spoke to them in ways words could not, and for a few minutes, everyone in the room was connected through her playing. The shy girl from the small apartment had found her voice, and it resonated far beyond what she could have imagined. When the final note faded, there was a moment of quiet, as if the room was holding its breath. Then the applause began, gentle at first, then growing louder, filling the space with appreciation and admiration. The girl felt a warmth in her chest, a mixture of relief and pride. She had done it. She had shared her music, and it had reached the hearts of those listening. Tears pricked her eyes, but she smiled, bowing slightly before stepping away from the piano. Among the audience was a visitor who had come to see the community event. He was a well-known musician who had traveled to perform and support local talent. He had been drawn to the library by chance, but when he heard the girl play, he was struck by the purity and emotion in her music. After the performance, he approached her and introduced himself, praising her talent and expressing interest in helping her develop further. The girl was stunned. She had never imagined that someone of his stature would notice her, let alone offer guidance and support. The volunteer teacher beamed, proud of his student and the recognition she had received. This encounter marked a turning point. The musician offered to introduce her to more experienced teachers, provide opportunities to perform at larger venues, and help her gain exposure to audiences who could appreciate her talent. For the girl, it was both exhilarating and overwhelming. She realized that her dream of sharing music with the world was becoming a real possibility. The piano that had once seemed distant and unattainable was now a gateway to experiences she had only imagined. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind. The girl began attending additional lessons with the musician's contacts, learning new techniques, and refining her performances. She explored different genres, styles, and compositions, discovering new ways to express herself. Her creativity blossomed, and her music became even more compelling, reflecting the depth of her emotions and her unique perspective on life. She remained humble, remembering the long hours of practice in the community center and the support of her mother, who had always believed in her. As her confidence grew, she participated in small concerts and recitals, each one an opportunity to share her music with more people. She learned how to manage performance anxiety, how to connect with the audience, and how to convey stories through her playing. Each performance brought new experiences and lessons, and with each one, she became more skilled and more assured in her abilities. The girl realized that her music could touch lives, evoke emotions, and create connections that transcended age, background, and circumstance. Her mother watched with pride as her daughter's journey unfolded. She had never expected that the piano could open doors and provide opportunities beyond their small apartment. Yet, she understood that the girl's talent and determination had earned this path. She continued to offer support, providing encouragement, celebrating successes, and helping her daughter stay grounded. The bond between them grew stronger, anchored in love, trust, and shared hope for the future. The girl's story began to attract attention beyond her local community. Parents of other children at the center, teachers, and local residents spoke about the young girl with extraordinary talent. Some shared stories of how her music had moved them, how her playing had brought calm, joy, or inspiration during difficult moments. The recognition was quiet at first, subtle and genuine, but it spread steadily. She remained focused on the music, driven by passion rather than the attention, but she could not deny that her talent was beginning to make an impact. Through all of this, the girl maintained her sense of humility and dedication. She practiced daily, exploring new pieces and composing her own melodies. She continued to learn from her teachers and mentors, appreciating their guidance and support. Her style became a unique blend of classical techniques and her own creative interpretations, reflecting both discipline and imagination. Each note she played told a story, each pause held emotion, and each performance carried a piece of her heart. She also began to think about her role as an inspiration. She understood that her journey could show others that talent could emerge from anywhere, that circumstances did not define potential. The small girl from a modest home, whose mother worked tirelessly to provide for her, could reach people through the power of music. This awareness gave her a sense of purpose and responsibility, motivating her to continue striving for excellence while remaining true to herself. As the turning point in her life unfolded, the girl learned valuable lessons about perseverance, courage, and the importance of embracing opportunities. She experienced the thrill of performing, the joy of connecting with others through her music, and the profound satisfaction of seeing her hard work recognized. Each step forward reinforced her belief that she could achieve great things, not by luck or coincidence, but through dedication, passion, and belief in her own abilities. By the end of this stage in her journey, the girl had transformed. She was no longer just a student practicing at the community center. She was a young musician with growing recognition, mentorship from experienced artists, and a future full of possibilities. Her talent, nurtured through hard work and guided by encouragement, had begun to shine brightly, opening doors and inspiring those around her. She had taken the first bold steps toward a life that could touch hearts, move minds, and inspire others, proving that even the humblest beginnings could lead to extraordinary outcomes. After her first public performance, the girl's life began to change in subtle but powerful ways. The musician who had discovered her introduced her to other artists and teachers, each offering new insights and opportunities. She attended workshops where she learned advanced techniques, explored different musical styles, and interacted with other young musicians who shared her passion. The experiences expanded her horizons, showing her that music was not only a personal expression, but also a way to communicate, collaborate, and inspire others. She spent long hours practicing, often late into the night, refining her technique and experimenting with new compositions. Her dedication impressed her mentors, who saw not only her talent, but her determination to grow. They encouraged her to perform in more formal settings, such as school concerts, local events, and charity performances. Each opportunity brought new challenges, larger audiences, unfamiliar venues, and higher expectations. At first, these situations made her nervous, but she learned to focus on the music and the story she wanted to tell, letting the emotion guide her fingers across the keys. With each performance, her confidence grew. She started to notice the effect her music had on people. Some would smile, others would close their eyes, and a few would shed tears. She realized that her playing could evoke feelings and memories, bring comfort, or spark inspiration. This awareness filled her with a sense of purpose. She was not just playing for herself or her teachers. She was reaching out to others, sharing a piece of herself that could make a difference in someone's day or even life. Her mother continued to support her in every way possible. She adjusted her work schedule when she could, making sure her daughter had time to attend lessons and performances. Sometimes she would bring snacks for her, quietly cheering from the back of the room during recitals. She never interfered with her practice, allowing her daughter to explore, make mistakes, and learn. The girl felt a deep sense of gratitude and love, understanding that her achievements were built on her own effort but supported by the unwavering belief of the person who loved her most. One day, the girl was invited to perform at a local arts festival. It was a larger audience than she had ever faced, including families, artists, and local dignitaries. As she sat at the piano, she felt a familiar mix of excitement and nerves. She focused on the music, allowing her emotions to guide her hands. The performance was met with applause, and several attendees approached her afterward, expressing admiration and asking questions about her journey. The experience reinforced her growing reputation and gave her the confidence to pursue even greater opportunities. The musician who had discovered her continued to mentor her, offering advice on stage presence, composition, and networking within the artistic community. He introduced her to other performers, encouraging collaborations that allowed her to experiment with different instruments, styles, and approaches. The girl found these experiences exhilarating, learning how her piano could harmonize with others, how her improvisations could complement a violin, a cello, or even a vocalist. She began to understand that music was a conversation, a shared language that connected people across different backgrounds and experiences. Her compositions became more complex and expressive. She drew inspiration from her surroundings, the people she met, and the stories she observed. Some pieces reflected joy and celebration, while others conveyed sadness, longing, or hope. Each composition was deeply personal yet universally relatable, allowing listeners to find their own meaning in her music. The girl realized that her talent was not just a skill but a responsibility, to touch hearts, to inspire creativity, and to show that even the humblest beginnings could lead to extraordinary possibilities. Word of her talent continued to spread. Local newspapers wrote small articles about her performances, social media posts shared videos of her playing, and community members spoke proudly of the young musician from their neighborhood. Despite this growing attention, the girl remained grounded. She focused on the music itself, remembering the small apartment, the community center, and the hours of practice that had brought her to this point. She knew that recognition was gratifying, but it was the connection with music and the joy of sharing it that mattered most. During this period, she began to inspire other young musicians. Children at the community center looked up to her, asking for guidance, tips, or simply to watch her play. She took time to teach them small techniques, showing patience and encouragement. She understood the importance of nurturing talent in others, just as her mentors had nurtured hers. The girl realized that her journey was not just about personal success, but also about helping others discover their own potential. Her collaborations with established artists brought new experiences and challenges. She had to adapt to different styles, learn to communicate effectively, and sometimes adjust her playing to fit a collective vision. These moments taught her flexibility, creativity, and resilience. She learned that music was not only about technical skill but also about empathy, listening, and responding to the energy of others. Each collaboration strengthened her abilities and broadened her perspective, preparing her for larger stages and wider audiences. As she performed more frequently, she began to see the impact of her music beyond the immediate audience. Teachers, parents, and fellow students spoke of how her performances motivated them, inspired new ideas, and created a sense of community. She realized that music had the power to bring people together, to foster understanding, and to spark creativity. This understanding fueled her desire to continue growing, to push her own boundaries, and to explore new ways of expressing herself. Despite the increasing demands on her time, she remained committed to her studies and her personal growth. She balanced lessons, practice, performances, and schoolwork with determination and focus. The girl developed strong discipline, learning how to manage her schedule, prioritize her goals, and maintain her passion without burning out. She understood that her talent was a gift that required dedication, care, and consistent effort. Throughout this period, her relationship with her mother remained a constant source of strength. Her mother provided practical support, emotional encouragement, and a safe space where she could reflect and recharge. They celebrated successes together, faced challenges together, and shared moments of quiet joy when the music flowed effortlessly. The bond between them deepened, rooted in love, mutual respect, and a shared understanding of the sacrifices and rewards that came with pursuing a dream. The girl's journey continued to attract attention from larger audiences and more experienced artists. Invitations to perform at community events, charity concerts, and small regional festivals became more frequent. Each performance brought new lessons, new challenges, and new connections. She embraced these experiences with humility and excitement, recognizing that each step was a building block for her growth as a musician and as a person. Through her rising recognition, she also became aware of the responsibility that came with visibility. She wanted to be a role model for others, especially children from similar backgrounds who might not believe that their dreams were achievable. She spoke gently about her journey, sharing the importance of practice, persistence, and believing in oneself. She demonstrated that talent could flourish even in difficult circumstances and that dedication could open doors previously thought closed. Her compositions continued to evolve, reflecting a deeper understanding of music and emotion. She explored different themes, experimented with rhythm and harmony, and refined her ability to convey complex feelings through sound. Each new piece challenged her creativity and technical skill, pushing her to explore new ideas and expand her musical vocabulary. She began to understand that growth in music was a lifelong journey, one that required curiosity, discipline, and an openness to learning from every experience. By the end of this stage, the girl had established herself as a young musician with growing recognition and influence. She had experienced the thrill of performing, the satisfaction of creating, and the joy of inspiring others. Her talent, nurtured through hard work and mentorship, had begun to shine brightly, and her music had touched the hearts of many. She had learned valuable lessons about collaboration, perseverance, and the impact of sharing her gift with the world. The girl had grown not only as a musician but also as a person, ready to face new opportunities and continue her journey of inspiration and discovery. As the girl's talent grew, so did her influence. Her story began to spread beyond her community, reaching people who had never seen her play but were inspired by the idea of a young girl from humble beginnings touching hearts with music. Newspapers and local blogs featured her performances, sharing her journey from a small apartment to the piano at the community center, and then to stages where her music reached hundreds of listeners. Despite the growing attention, she remained focused on the music itself, understanding that her true purpose was not fame, but the power of her music to connect and inspire. The girl began to receive invitations to perform at larger venues, including cultural festivals, charity events, and school programs. Each stage brought new experiences, and she approached them with humility and excitement. She learned to adapt to different audiences, understanding what emotions and energy each crowd might bring, and she discovered the joy of tailoring her music to touch people in a meaningful way. The applause and recognition were gratifying, but it was the connection she felt through her music that truly mattered. She also started collaborating more extensively with other artists. Pianists, violinists, and vocalists shared their skills, and she found new ways to blend her music with theirs. Through these collaborations, she learned patience, teamwork, and the art of compromise in music, recognizing that each performance was a dialogue rather than a solo statement. Her own compositions became richer and more nuanced, reflecting the influence of others while remaining deeply personal and expressive. In parallel, she began mentoring younger children at the community center. She shared techniques she had learned, encouraged experimentation, and emphasized the importance of dedication and passion. Children who once watched her from a distance now followed her guidance, gaining confidence in their own abilities. She discovered the joy of giving back, of nurturing talent in others as she had been nurtured. Her influence was expanding not just through performance, but through teaching and example. Her mother remained her anchor. The small apartment that had once seemed confining now felt like the heart of their journey. They celebrated milestones together, whether it was a successful performance, a completed composition, or recognition from mentors and audiences. Her mother's sacrifices had allowed her to pursue her dreams, and she never took that support for granted. Their bond deepened as they shared the highs and lows, laughter, and quiet moments of reflection. Music had strengthened their connection and brought them closer together. the girl began to recognize the responsibility her growing platform brought. She understood that her story could inspire others, especially children facing challenges similar to those she had known. She spoke gently to audiences about perseverance, creativity, and believing in one's abilities. Through her example, she demonstrated that talent and dedication could overcome obstacles, and that opportunities were possible even for those who started with very little. Her influence was subtle but profound, touching lives in ways that extended far beyond her music. She also found ways to contribute to her community more broadly. Performances at charity events raised funds for educational programs, and she helped organize workshops for children interested in music. She discovered that sharing her skills and opportunities could create a ripple effect, empowering others and fostering a sense of community. Her music was no longer just a personal expression. It had become a force for connection, education, and inspiration. Through this period, her compositions continued to grow in depth and sophistication. She explored themes of hope, resilience, and joy, weaving her own experiences and emotions into each piece. The music became a reflection of her journey, telling stories of struggle, triumph, and the beauty of human connection. Audiences responded not only to her technical skill but to the honesty and emotion in her performances, feeling a deep resonance with her melodies and harmonies. Her journey also brought opportunities for recognition by experienced and established artists. Many were drawn to her music and story, collaborating with her, offering guidance, and celebrating her accomplishments. She learned to navigate these experiences with grace and professionalism, maintaining humility while embracing the opportunities that came her way. Each interaction reinforced her understanding that music was a shared experience, and that collaboration and respect for others enriched her own expression. Despite her growing prominence, she remained deeply connected to her roots. She continued visiting the community center, practicing on the piano where it all began, and spending quiet moments at home with her mother. She knew that her talent and success were grounded in the support, dedication, and love of those who had helped her along the way. This awareness kept her humble, focused, and grateful, ensuring that she never lost sight of what truly mattered. Her story began to inspire media coverage, with articles, videos, and interviews highlighting her journey from a small apartment to larger stages. People admired not only her skill but her perseverance, creativity, and humility. Letters and messages arrived from children and parents, thanking her for inspiring hope and sharing stories of how her music motivated them to pursue their own passions. She realized that her influence was far-reaching, touching lives in ways she had never imagined when she first sat at a piano in the community center. As she matured, her vision for her music expanded. She began composing pieces that addressed broader themes, reflecting on community, empathy, and human connection. She recognized that her music had the power to transcend cultural and social boundaries, bringing people together and evoking shared emotions. Each composition became not just a personal expression, but a message, a bridge between hearts and minds. She also continued to explore teaching and mentoring. Workshops she organized helped children discover their talents, build confidence, and understand the value of persistence and creativity. She witnessed the joy and growth of these young learners, finding fulfillment in their success as much as in her own. Music became a shared journey, a means of empowerment and encouragement for the next generation. Through performances, mentorship, and outreach, the girl's story had come full circle. She was no longer just a young pianist learning her craft. She was a source of inspiration, a mentor, and a beacon of hope for others. The piano, once a distant dream in a small apartment, had become a vessel for expression, connection, and transformation. Her music carried with it not only the story of her life but also the potential to inspire countless others. At home, she would sometimes sit quietly at the piano, reflecting on her journey. Her fingers moved effortlessly across the keys, playing melodies that told her story, conveyed her emotions, and celebrated her experiences. She felt gratitude for the people who had guided and supported her, for the opportunities that had arisen, and for the power of music to shape lives. The room, once modest and simple, now resonated with the echoes of her growth, perseverance, and achievement. Her mother often sat nearby, watching, smiling, and feeling proud of the young woman who had blossomed through music. They shared quiet conversations about the challenges and joys of her journey, understanding that each step forward was built on love, dedication, and resilience. Music had strengthened their bond, transformed their lives, and opened doors to possibilities that had once seemed out of reach. The girl's journey inspired artists, audiences, and children alike. Her story demonstrated that talent, when nurtured with dedication and love, could overcome adversity. She became a symbol of hope and possibility, showing that even humble beginnings could lead to remarkable achievements. Her music continued to move people, creating connections that transcended age, background, and circumstance. In the end, she returned often to the community center, to the piano where it all began. There, surrounded by the echoes of her first melodies and the memories of early practice sessions, she continued to play, create, and inspire. Her story, once that of a shy girl from a modest apartment, had grown into a legacy of talent, perseverance, and impact. The daughter of a cleaner who had once hesitated at a piano had become a musician whose music, dedication, and spirit inspired countless others, proving that dreams could take flight when nurtured with passion, love, and courage.